This video is going to cover the order of operations. Now, the order of operations is an agreement that scientists and mathematicians around the world have made so that if an expression contains a mixture of operations, then we perform the operations in a specific order because using other orders can result in different answers. It's an agreement that has been made so everybody gets the same answer for the same problem. Now, this order of operations agreement has 4 steps that we're going to take. The first step is grouping symbols. That means anything inside of a parentheses, or brackets, or braces, or absolute value bars, or underneath a radical will get done first. The next step is to simplify exponents and roots. And we do this, just like we read, from left to right. The third step is to do multiplication and division together as they appear from left to right. Finally, when all that's left over is addition and subtraction, we do those addition and subtraction problems as they appear from left to right. In our first example, we have 18 minus 12 divided by 3 times -2 plus a -5 squared. Notice that there are a couple of sets of parentheses, but these parentheses do not contain larger expressions that need to be simplified, so we are not dealing with grouping symbols first. So be aware that if you have a set of parentheses but only have a single term inside there, it's going to be multiplication and not a grouping symbol that needs to be looked at first. So the first thing that we need to do is the exponents. So -5 squared, and remember this square is going to go with the negative and the 5, is going to be a 25. So I'm going to put plus 25 on the end and just bring everything else down. Now from here we go to the next step and we have multiplication and division from left to right, just as they appear. So our first division is this guy right here. So I'm going to bring this 18 minus down, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. And I'm just bring everything else down. Okay, continuing on, we have this multiplication that we're going to do, and 4 times a -2 is going to be a -8 plus 25. Well, when I have two negatives right next to each other like this, they're going to become a positive. So really this is 18 plus 8 plus 25. So now it's time for my division, so now it's time for my addition and subtraction from left to right. Well, 18 and 8 together make 26 plus 25, and 26 plus 25 make 51. So in our first example, we have 51. In this next example, we'll see that we have a couple of different grouping symbols that we can work with first. So I see an absolute value right there, and that's considered a grouping symbol. And I also have a radical, and that's considered a grouping symbol. So I'm going to start there and just rewrite my problem as I see it, and then work on simplifying what's inside first. So inside this first grouping symbol, the absolute value bars, I have 5 minus the quantity 4 plus 3. Notice inside my grouping symbols, I have more grouping symbols. So this 4 plus 3 is going to get done first. And 4 plus 3 is going to be 7. So I'm going to bring that down and say 5 minus 7, the absolute value of that, minus, now let's go ahead and see what we can do with this grouping symbol. 16 plus 9 is 25, so it's minus the square root of 25. Well, let's go ahead and finish off this grouping symbol like we had it. So I'm going to rewrite our problem, -2 cubed minus 3 times the absolute value, and 5 minus 7 will be -2 minus the square root of 25. Okay, so now it looks like we just have some roots and some exponents to work on next, and we're going to do those from left to right. So negative 2 cubed, well, there's 3 negative signs, so our value will be negative, and then 2 cubed is 8. And then let's go ahead and do this absolute value business. We have the absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2. And I'm going to change this from absolute value bars to a parentheses because I'm going to end up multiplying these things. So continuing from left to right, the square root of 25 is going to be 5. So now I have some multiplication to do. Let's do that from left to right. I have this right here, 3 times 2. So I have a minus 8 minus 3 times 2 is 6, and then minus 5. Now that's all the multiplication and division, so we move down and do addition and subtraction from left to right. Negative 8 minus 6 is a negative 14, and this negative 5 comes down. And now negative 14 minus 5 is negative 19. And that's our final answer, because now we have simplified it all that we can. Our next example is kind of just a big fraction. So the way we're going to tackle this is that we're going to simplify the numerator, and then simplify the denominator, and then we'll see what we have from there. We might be able to get rid of the fraction altogether with a nice division, or we might be able to simplify the fraction itself. It just kind of depends on what we have when we get that far. So let's go ahead and simplify this numerator and denominator first. So I'm going to work it to the right instead of up and down, simply because I have a fraction this time. So my grouping symbols get done first, which we have a radical right there. So this radical is going to be 4 times 9, which is 36. So I'm going to have the opposite of the radical of 36. Now the numerator doesn't have any grouping symbols because the parentheses that are here just are going to mean exponents and multiplication. So those are things we can tackle at the appropriate time. So the first thing here we want to do is this exponent. And we have negative 3 to the power of 4. Our exponent is even, so we know this negative is going to go away because there's going to be 4 negative symbols. So 3 to the power of 4 is going to be 81. And it's going to be minus 3 times a negative 5. Okay, now I'm going to work my way down. And let's do this radical. So the top is going to remain for now, 81 minus 3 times a negative 5. And the bottom is going to be a negative 6, because the square root of 36 is 6. Let's go ahead and see what we can do with this numerator now. When we multiply, we're going to get 81 minus, and then 3 times a negative 5 is a negative 15. And that negative 6 kind of hangs out there still. Okay, let's jump down here. Well, let's do our addition and subtraction from left to right. And it looks like we have 81 minus a negative 15. Well, whenever we have two negatives right there, the negatives are going to cancel and make a positive. So it's going to be 81 plus 15 over negative 6. And 81 plus 15 is going to be 96 over a negative 6. Well, this looks like it's going to come out pretty nice now, because I know that 96 divided by 6 is going to be 16. And how many negative signs do we have? Just the one. So the negative sign comes along for the ride, and our final answer is a negative 16. So our final example has one grouping symbol, so I'm going to do that first. And it's the absolute value of 9 minus 16. So everything gets written and just carried along for the ride until we simplify that absolute value. In this case, 9 minus 16 is a negative 7. So now we have exponents over here, so let's do that exponent next. So rewrite everything. And as you do more of these problems, you'll probably get more comfortable and you can kind of skip some steps around a little bit. But for right now, we want to make sure that we do everything slowly and properly to make sure we get it right. So, negative 4 to the power of 3, well, 3 is an odd exponent, so I know this negative symbol is going to stick around, and 4 cubed is 64. So here's what we have right now. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this and kind of make it a little nicer, because I want to get rid of this absolute value business and just say plus 7. And then I don't like having these two signs right next to each other, plus a negative. So I'm going to say minus 64. Okay, now I'm ready to do my multiplication and my division together from left to right. So what I encounter first is a 24 divided by negative 3. Well, that's going to be negative 8. And everything else just gets brought down. Now I'm ready for multiplication. Negative 8 times negative 4. That's going to give me a 32 plus 7 minus 64. So now I'm ready for my addition. 32 plus 7. That's going to be 39 minus 64. And 39 minus 64 is going to be a negative 25. So my final answer for all that business is a negative 25.